So, welcome everyone to yet another episode of Coffee and Consoles. Thank you for stopping by. I'm Jeff from Avid, and grateful for Tony Joy is here also from Avid, and Robert Miller as well. So thank you for that. We are going to go through, as always, I've got my little stack of cards here that we're going to kind of go through. I've got some ideas. As always, if you are curious or kind of want to, ask a question or even just chime in, you absolutely can. But let's maybe start with the Q&A, and maybe Robert and Tony will interact from there. But if it's something kind of tangential to what we're talking about, let's go there and let's discuss. That's really the whole point of this. I've got a bunch of different kind of screen views that we're going to experiment with. I'm kind of just moving kind of some Stream Deck stuff around, so this will be a little bit experimental, but it'll be fun. And the topic of the day is management. That's kind of broad, but I want to really focus in on managing windows, plug-in windows, panning windows, channels, certainly soft keys. It's really about making it easier to get around, I think, is one of the concepts. And it's not necessarily just, okay, we're going to make plug-in maps, we're going to make talk about automation and automation playlists and things. It's more about trying to create strategies that will make your life easier on the desk. I think that's kind of how I approach it. So that's kind of what we're going to look at here today. We are capturing the session, and let's start with some concepts. So the first thing I want to talk about, just to kind of baby steps into this a little bit, is markers and memory locations. And this is very simple, but I do want to take it a little bit out of the kind of the default and the basics, and we'll kind of grow it a little bit. Maybe we will, let's go to maybe the big camera view just for a second here so we can see that. And once again, I'm on my S6. It does look a little bit different than some configurations because it is a bit, but essentially I've got 16 faders, fader knob and processes at the top, displays, center section, and then essentially a panner, a tension knob, PEC direct, and a master meter. Okay, so that's what we have here. And we're going to talk about a little bit of tweaking with regard to some of the attention zones and things as we get into it, but we'll start here. So the first thing I want to look at is memory locations or markers. This is a very, very simple thing, but a very important thing. And whether a marker, whether a memory location is just a selection, a timecode location, a selection, or it could even trigger a window set, which we will talk about a little bit as well. I'm just going to press the memory location button, which is right below the timecode field here. And that's going to just essentially light up this little tiny panel, and I can basically jump through and get to whatever locate that I want to get to. That is not a huge amount of real estate, and sometimes you want to use more than that. We'll just go back to a split view real quick here. And as such, you have different ways that you can configure this. And so that's the first thing we want to look at, is some options for addressing this. Okay, so the first one that's kind of built in but can be customized would be to take advantage of Shift minus. And Shift minus basically says, hey, now this whole kind of column over here is going to let me take a look at marker locations. In this particular session, let me kind of set up the session, because it's really not really a session. It's actually more like a toolkit. And I'm happy to share this with anybody that wants it at any point. But I think of it as like a toolkit. And the idea with it was really about the nuts and bolts for working in Atmos, more specifically music, but having the infrastructure built from native mono objects, native stereo objects, Dolby Atmos Music Panner, LTC, binaural settings, every kind of possible thing, and not exactly, this is how you have to work, but creating the infrastructure so that you can actually use it to start and then get ideas from. That's really the idea. Okay. So with that said, on the desk, we'll just go back to our split view here one more time. On the desk, I'm going to quickly open up some zones. We always, we really talk about this a lot. In this particular project, we're going to use folders. I think folders are hugely powerful. So what I'm doing is just going to go to left zone. I'm going to go to track types. I'm going to go to folder. And I've got a lot of things folderized already in this template slash toolkit. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go into my ident. Those are basically spoken channel identifications folder. Okay. And I'm going to do a couple things here. First of all, I'm going to do I'm going to do shift control and I'm going to touch select. What did that do? Well, it basically justified that track as the top in the session. Shift control is really handy. And I'm in the folder, right? It brought me into the folder via a spill. And then I basically said, show me that kind of justified in the edit window. Okay, so that's what I just did. I'm showing pan. We'll talk about function views and all that kind of thing in a second. But from here, I'm going to just press a memory location over here. I'm still in this vertical view, right? To say I want to get to channel idents. And you should be able to see that I now have individual channels. And this was really like about, either Dolby Pink or channels to be able to test individual speakers. So I'm just using this as an example, but what this allows me to do is to quickly go to channel left. And let's see here. Let's actually go into our, let's go to our Pink left actually first here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to take a look at where we are on the timeline, and we are there. Let me just zoom in so you can see a little bit better. Okay, so we have some selections that are defined down the timeline. We have a way to kind of get around and do that kind of thing quickly, and that's kind of what we're doing in this way. If we want more space with regard to the kind of the heads up display for the locates, we can also do shift memory locations, right? And so that's going to open up really all of these so that I can see all my markers at one time. One thing, as always, you can customize these. So if we go back to shift minus, right now I'm actually showing locates or markers on the left side and then automation on the right side. If I wanted to show, let's just say that we want this to be editing and snapshots here, we'll just do a quick customization on that so you can see that, because that's going to be a kind of a common theme here today, is really, hold down shift. And basically what we're doing is we're saying locates are on the left side, right? Memory locations are on the left side, and on the right side, hey, let's do snapshots and let's do, I don't know, maybe editing. You can pick and choose whatever you want to do. That's the beauty of this. There's user functions, there's automation functions. Let's just choose editing. Okay. So what does that do? Well, now when I do shift minus, basically this gives me editing, it gives me snapshots, and it gives me locates, like markers, right? Okay. So that is kind of the start. One thing that's also really important, as you start to do some customization, the very first thing I would do before doing anything else is to press the export button, right? This is huge. So I'm going to just say CNC set A. Actually, I'll do CNC JJKA. Okay. So what is that? Well, you're basically now diverging from the factory set. And so as such, you really should save it, especially if there's multiple people that work on the desk at one time, you should save it. Because what I could do is, and we'll just toggle over really quickly into automation here real quick, okay? What I could do is I could sit down, I'm gonna do a shift 0. Shift 0 is the factory set, right? I could sit down and say, whoa, this is Bob's set. Yeah, I'm not good with this. I press factory, I hit okay. It restores every possible thing back to the way I want to work instead of the way Bob wants to work, right? And now that's factory, but I made tweaks as we just started to kind of go down that road. I made some optimizations. So I do import and I go find my CNC JJKA, just right there, and I hit open, okay? And now if I do shift minus, which we just talked about, I have my locates, my markers, and I have snapshots and editing, right? And that's the idea. So as we start kind of going down this road, we're going to do more optimization, right? It's really, okay, that's kind of cool, but that's not exactly how I work. So let me tweak that and save that, right? And have multiple sets. You don't have to have one XML. You could have several different ones depending on your use case. I think that's a really important concept, okay? So basics about markers, editing, 3 different ways. Essentially, we'll go back to 0 so you can see real quick. Single page, page around, absolutely fine. Shift minus, we tweaked shift minus so that it locates here, and then whatever panels are important to you. Shift memory location. Basically giant, I think about that like as a playback, right? And I want to quickly move around to any different thing. That's what that is. You also do have a dedicated edit locate right here. So you can press edit locate and you can press an actual switch and then do a modification. Change it to a marker, change it to a selection, do whatever makes sense, right? So that's important, okay? So it's just a little kind of baby steps into this with markers, I think is a good place to start. The next thing I want to do is here, we'll just go Shift 0 to get back to kind of where we were. We're going to do something totally different, which I think will be fun. And we're going to go into the deep end a little bit here, but never fear, I'm here to help you. And what we're going to do is let's change our view slightly. Okay. So let's go here for a second. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to show a little bit of navigation in terms of moving around and wrangling tracks. And actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to go to the big camera first. Okay. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of what's in here quickly, and then we're going to work from there. And I want to show basically moving around, changing views. We're going to create some layouts. We're going to create some kind of composite views as well. But the first thing I want to do is show kind of the structure and how to get around. And we've already done a little bit of that. I'm going to press menu. And that's going to get me back to my folders, which are just living in the left zone right now, okay? So with that said, why don't let's try this. I think this will be cool. What we're going to do is we're going to go, one of my folders is Dolby Atmos Music Panner, damp, right? And so that is, instead of using the native Atmos Panner in Pro Tools, it's saying, I want to use, because I maybe want to lock tempos to lock panning moves to tempo, I could use that. So this is a subset, a folder that contains just those. I'm going to go into there, and you can see those right now. They're in pan view. I probably would actually care to see these more in inserts view, right? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit all and inserts. Why? Well, because I'm not actually using the Pro Tools Panner. I'm going to use the Dolby Panner for this workflow, for this example. Okay. Before we kind of continue further, I'm going to attention the first track. You can see the center section as well, which is fine. And I'm just going to show you that I've got some maps and things created already that I'm going to dive into. Okay. So, on the first Dolby Atmos Music Panner, it's a stereo 1 track. I'm going to push in on the plugin, and we'll change our view in a second. I just want to show you everything here, and then we're going to zoom out slightly. So it brought me, I do have a map for not only the faders, but only the knob module. I've mapped everything, and we've talked about maps quite a bit in the past, but I just want to show you that if I push in, I am now on that attention track, which is the DMP, the Atmos Panner Stereo 1, okay? So this is fine. My problem with this is that it's kind of slow, because if I'm working on this first one, I basically have to go back out, and now I have to go in attention number 2, and I have to push in, and now I have all these awesome maps. That's cool. But the problem is it's slow to kind of get back out, get back in. And that's kind of what I wanted to try to optimize. And that's what I've done. So with that, let me change my view to this view. So I don't think you need to actually see the, let's see, let's just make this a little bit bigger. I don't think you really need to see the automation, the master module for right now. Yeah, that's fine. It's good enough. Okay, so what are we going to do? Well, we're going to leverage basically the on attention. We're going to basically on demand turn this whole section into a fat channel to be able to get around faster. So that was kind of my idea for this. So how do we do that? Well, basically what I've done is I'm going to enable the on attention faders and knobs. So to see that, I'm going to go over to settings. We're going to go to surface, and you're going to see that I've actually declared an on-attention fader, and I've declared a second on-attention knob. We've talked about these a little bit, but this is a pretty unique thing on S6 where you can on-demand enable or suspend zones. And you're basically turning your traditional kind of normal behavior desk into a, hey, you know what? Now focus everything on the attention channel. That's what that does. So I thought about this and I said, this would be actually kind of an interesting workflow. So here's what we do. Here's what we're doing. We're going to turn these on. Okay. And we're going to make sure on the center section that we are actually focused in on the Dolby Atmos Music Panner. So we're actually pushed into that, right? So what does that mean? Well, that track is attentioned. I'm actually pushed in on that track. So we'll just get out for a second. I'm going to suspend these. They go back to normal behavior, right? Okay. So what's going on here? Let's just justify this in the editor too, so you can see it. So the first track is the top track, right? It's attentioned, it's selected, and I'm pushed in on the stack. What does that mean? Well, instead of looking at chains view, I'm looking at specifically the Dolby Atmos Music Panner. And I'll show you why in a second. What this is going to allow me to do is to turn these zones on, push into this, and basically have the ability to quickly go through any panner individually, right? So check this out. I have, and actually one more thing I need to do. There's always one more thing, right? I want to actually have it, and I need to talk about this in more detail, but I actually want it to, I want it to open up the plugin when I touch it. And we're going to talk about this in a little more detail, but we talked about it before, but open Windows when editing mode, plugins only, okay? That's on. What does that do for me? Well, when I touch the knobs or faders, it brings up the Dolby Atmos Music Panner, okay? I'm going to change my view slightly here for a second. And obviously I have your X and I have Y and I have Z, okay? And you're probably like, okay, we've seen this before. That all makes total sense. Well, you haven't exactly seen this. The cool thing about this is I've actually mapped the plus and minus here, which, you know, that would be just a QWERTY kind of plus or minus. You could nudge, obviously. I've got that on the QWERTY as well. So I basically changed plus and minus to basically move the selection up or down in Pro Tools. And I'll show you that in a second. So if I want to quickly get to Dolby Atmos Music Panner Stereo 4, I could literally just go, boom, down to 4. And there is that. There's my object size. There's my Z. That's all duplicated here as well, X, Y, Z, right? Plus or minus, right? So plus would be, you know, I said essentially minus go down, plus go up is kind of how I approach it. You can do whatever you want. But if I hit plus, I go to 3. And now I'm in 3. And I can quickly get to that, okay? I'm going to show you this too. I kind of came up with this as well as kind of a harebrain, was sometimes in the editor, the window's not really where you want it, right? Everybody, I'm sure, has experienced this, where you know, it's on top of something in the editor, or you don't have enough screen real estate. So I also came up with a way, which we're going to look at how to move this around without touching it. And I'll explain that in a second. But basically, just to show you, I have the ability to get to a window config that's denoting where the position of the window should be. So if I want it on the right, I can go on the right. If I want it on the left, I can bring it on the left. And it basically applies in kind of a global manner for the windows. Okay, so I know I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but wanted to show a couple things. So back to the initial discussion of what we were doing, which was we enabled zones, right? We are attentioning on our Dolby Atmos Music Panner track. And because we need to leverage, we want to quickly kind of maybe do some panning on a bunch of different tracks quickly. We don't want to have to go in, out, attention. We can literally just go right through. To do that, we're turning this all thing into a fat channel. We're enabling the knob and the fader zones. We are basically enabling this for control over the stack, right? So what does that mean? It basically means that we can quickly get to our panner on any track. Check it out. Music Panner 3. I need to go to 4. There's 4. There's Music Panner 4. I need to go to 5. There's 5. Right? I need to go back up to stereo 1. I plus up to 1. Okay. So this was the idea. And it could be really, really fast. And again, you could either use the knobs or the faders. If you're doing step sequencer, you do have your step sequencer stuff right here, enables on the second page. They're here too. So that's the idea. So let me show you how I'm doing it. It's not that complicated, but I think it is very beneficial. Two things really is really how this is accomplished. Let me just close the window for a second. I'm going to go to settings. And the first thing that's really key is at the top of the user settings, there is essentially the edit selection move up down, right? That's what we're kind of keying off of as essentially from the DAW to say, hey, reattention when I move the edit selection up or down. That's what that's doing. And then that kind of in combination with, if we go look at the locates, which is I'm using, excuse me, the locate section. And like I said, I'm using plus and minus because I don't use them. So I remap them. So basically minus is editing selection, move selection down, plus is move selection up. And that's exactly what those are doing. So that kind of combination tells it to, hey, go to the next track, go to the next track. So you're basically nudging the attention fader. It's really what you're doing, right? So just with plus or minus right here. So there we go. And again, based on my preferences, if I touch a parameter, it knows to bring up the plugin window. So we're going to get into Windows as well, because obviously Windows is a big part of what we're going to talk about. But the other part of this I think is useful, I'll show you a couple different ways to do this, was being able to move the window around and being able to have it snap in certain places that are useful. And then even closing windows, right, which we'll talk about. Okay, so that was my first thing. And then to go back to the kind of your normal behavior, I'm going to page out of this, essentially hit back to go back to the chains view, and I'm going to turn off these zones. And it is now exactly back the way that we started, whereby if I attention a track, I push a plugin, in this case, the panner, I'm in, and it's that one thing that's been locally expanded. Okay. So that's, I know we jumped into the deep end pretty quickly, but I really wanted to show you, some of these workflows I think that are really, really interesting. Okay, so we're going to come back to Windows a lot, but that's the first place I wanted to go. So let's go back to that preference, because that's really important, and we always talk about it, but I can't really cover it enough. And that preference is really about, so we're on the user settings, if you follow me here. User settings, and what is this? This is basically, if I touch a parameter, right, in any touch sensitive area, basically what windows do you want to see? And you don't have to set it to any. You could literally say, I never want to see a window from the DAW. Totally up to you, right? You could also say, I want to see every possible window that exists. That's also up to you. So right now it's plugins only, but let's go toggle it just for the heck of it. We'll go to plugins and pan, because we're going to look at some other workflows that will take advantage of that. Okay, that window is important because it determines what happens when you touch a parameter, either on a knob or a fader. Okay, so that's a good one. We talked about importing and exporting. That's also really good. Let's do this. Let's change our view slightly here. Go back to maybe the split view here. Okay. We're going to basically jump out of this, hit menu, and that takes us back to our folder structure, where I can see basically streams, beds, objects, Dolby Atmos MP, which we talked about, right? So I can jump into beds, right? And I have, some various stuff on there, and I can jump into objects, mono and stereo objects. I'm just showing you kind of encapsulating all these different things you may want to get to. That's really what we're looking at. Okay. So let's do this. Let's build a composite macro, if you will, to be able to get to a chunk of objects, mono or stereo, and also bring them up in a certain way on the desk and show a certain view on the panners as well. So that's kind of what I'm proposing to do. So to do this, I'm going to close the zone down. So Shift, clear the zone. And I'm going to go and, we just basically figure out what we want to do here. So let's just say we want to do objects. Okay. So we can, let's see, there's several different ways to kind of get around here, but I'm going to say, let's just jump into the object folder and we will go to some mono objects. Okay. So we just quickly kind of found our mono objects, and we're gonna get there. Okay. So you could also scroll to you could also do a scroll to track. And what is that all about? Well, basically I can say scroll to track, and I could just start typing, and basically have the desk jump to a certain track. And that's what it just did. It just actually jumped based on my justification to object mono 71. And so that's where it's going to kind of grow from. Okay. So scroll the track, which is here, start typing what you're looking for. It justifies it. It brings it in here. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to quickly build a layout. I'm going to go to the tracks page and basically double touch assign. What does this do? Well, it saves me the time of having to load a bunch of stuff in. So if I double touch assign, it's going to preload in a bunch of mono objects. It's going to do essentially the first 16 mono things that are sitting here on my desk. And I can obviously add or subtract, but it's a great place to start to get what you're looking for. Before I hit store, I'm probably going to push the all button and figure out what view I want, right? Whether it's inputs or pans or sends, or in this case, I want pans. I'm doing native Atmos panning. So I'm going to choose pans and I'm basically going to hit store. Okay. And so we're just going to call this object mono. Okay. And hit store again. Okay. So let's recall that, right? There's obviously multiple ways to recall that. We'll just maybe maximize this a little bit so you can see better. I can actually just go layouts and object mono, and that's going to come back, right? So check this out. We're just looking at various tracks right now. Layout recall, object mono, and I've got that, okay? So I justified the tracks. What does that mean? Well, regardless of where you're at in Pro Tools, right? So, you may be looking at the stream, the beds, whatever. I can just shift control select, and it's going to top justify that track in the edit window. Okay. So that was kind of the first idea. Let me go to let's go to a slightly different view here real quick. I know I've got a lot of views, but this one I need custom real estate for the windows. So what we're going to do, we turned on the preference that said, show my windows, right? And so if I touch an encoder, it's going to bring up the pan window, right? And this is just the 2D view, but it's bringing up the panner windows for all of these tracks, right? Okay, pretty straightforward. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a window config for some panners that we're working on that we care about. We may want to get back to. Maybe we're doing a cluster of things that are part of the same design. Lots of different applications, but basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically bring up some windows, and I'm holding down the shift key. You can bring these wherever you want. I'm just going to do 4 of these just as an example, but I'm detargeting and I'm adding a couple different windows to the equation. Okay. So I brought up the first 4 mono object panners just so that I can see them. They're detargeted. That's a little red square, right? And what does that mean? Well, it means if I touch anything, it's not going to replace what's there because it's detargeted. It's going to stay on the screen. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just simply create a window configuration quickly. I've actually reprogrammed my enter key in a lot of these to be window config based things. So if I press enter, I can quickly say, locate 79, whatever your workflow, however you want to set this up. I'm just going to call this object mono, and I'm going to store this at 79. Okay. The other thing that I've done here is I've always set 0 to be 0. 0 meaning this is the default thing I want to see in the edit window. These are all the timelines I want to see. This is what I want to see in the toolbar. This is kind of my default state. I set that up as 0 as a window config. Okay. So go back to here so you can see better. And let's go look at some of this real quick. We're going to go I'm going to take the layout out. We're going to go to settings. We're going to go to soft keys. We're going to go interrogate 0. What is 0? Well, it's a UConn function. It's triggering a window configuration. It's 0. It's exactly what I just defined. It's the state that you want to be kind of your default state. Well, I want to quickly build something that is also the ability for me to get those mono objects in a cluster of windows that I want to get to quickly. So how do I do that? Well, same idea, right? You pick the real estate that you want to put it on. Let's just say that I've got, and there's lots of different ways to do this. I'm going to say that I've got a user page, and I'm just using Shift plus, but I'm now accessing a user page on the soft keys. You've got as much real estate as you want. You can put it wherever you want. I'm going to choose to put it right here. Okay, my choice. And so what is this? Well, I'm going to give me that layout that composes the mono objects. Give me a certain configuration of window configuration of panners, and I want that where I want that. Right. So here's what we do. Basically, we start adding a surface function, and this surface is going to be titles, layouts, and it's called object mono. If you remember, that's what that is, right? And now I'm going to add a ucon function to basically give me the same thing that we talked about, which was object mono, right? So I'm recalling a layout. Obviously, if I just want to go to a certain timecode location, I could choose ucon memory location or marker. That's fine. I'm doing something a little bit more specific. You get to pick what you want this to look like. I'm not going to spend too much time like aesthetically tweaking this, but I'm just setting this to kind of if you go to system and go to faders, you're going to see faders. So give this a name. It's always a good idea. Object mono and object mono. Okay. So that's all I'm doing there. So let's go back to our slightly different view here. And I'm on the desk. We'll shrink this up a little bit or blow it up a little bit. And so assuming I did everything correctly, and we'll just go to the home page here. And if I press this, I should get back to my mono objects, native objects, and I should get into those particular window views, right? And I have some of it. Okay. I do have my layout, which is kind of what I want. That's along the right lines. But I don't have everything that I want. So let me just double check and make sure I did everything correct. I might have messed something up. Oh, you know what the first thing is to make sure that I actually program this in the right way, which I may not have. So let's just go back and look at our soft keys real quick. So I was probably doing this quicker than I should have been, but that's okay. So object mono, yeah, okay. So, okay, so we'll come back to this. I'm missing a couple things, but that's the basic idea. And we'll look at it from a different perspective, but that's kind of the idea, is being able to create combinations of sets that allow you to move around in a different way. Okay. Let's do some basic things here with regard to windows. If we do recall our locate, which we can get to quickly, right? Recall our mono objects. I did set up the ability to move these around, which we talked about briefly, but basically it was, if I want to kind of get that out of the way, I could recall a window config, which is kind of what we're doing here, to really kind of move that around. So there's a left barrier and there's a right barrier. And I've set that up for both panning and for plugins, right? So it's really just because you can't always get exactly, where you want to put the window. So let's just show you for plugins as well. If I come over here on the right side and we bring up our, actually, let's see. Let's go back to all. So I'm gonna bring up the right zone, and we're gonna bring up track types folders, okay? And on the right side, we're gonna bring up processing. So as always, we have our pro sub and our delays and reverbs. So we're gonna go and grab the pro sub, okay? So I've got the pro sub. I've got, as you can see, expand fader map. I've set up different window configs so that I can actually move this to different spots as well, so that the plugin can be moved around, right? And the panner can also be moved around, and those are separate. And it's really just a convenience of being able to, to manage your space. And all that is the system remembering the location that you place that at, right? So now that the plugins are there, if I go and bring up a reverb, that reverb is there, right? It's stuck in that location until I move it, which I can do right over here, right? That's the idea, okay? Okay, let's press 0. What is 0? 0 basically is clear. Again, it's basically take me back to the scenario where there's no windows anywhere. The next thing I want to do is look at another kind of workflow application of taking advantage of some of these window configs. And another thing that I thought about was, let's do this. Let's just do a quick scroll the track once again. So scroll the track. I'm going to type in perk. I want to get to my perk track. Okay. And we are going to, let's just zoom out. So zoom horizontal out of this a little bit. Okay. And I want to show a little bit of clip effects in this particular scenario. So what I've done is basically I have created, I've used the period to basically take me into clip effects. And it's all as it is, again, is a window configuration, very, very simple. But I'm using the previous and next switches on the transport to basically jump clip to clip. If you set up your preferences appropriately, you can use your numerical keys to quickly recall a clip effects preset. If you're just rolling off low frequency, if you're filtering a certain, notching something out, dealing with noise, dealing with plosives, whatever, you can do any of that, right? So 1 through 5, very simple. I don't need to reprogram those. Those are great. What I could also do is I could do shift and take advantage of my the goodness of the soft keys to be able to look at clip gain stuff, right? And so again, I could put that wherever I want it. But let's just say I want to copy this notch that I had here, right? So I can say copy clip effects and come down to some other location, and I can paste clip effects, which is here, right? Okay, I can clear this, right? It's cut clip effects, right? So I can recall, I can cut, copy, paste. I can use any of my numerics, and I can quickly add shapes and do things. And again, leveraging basically the quick macro that I created, which is period, I just hit 0, and I'm back to my default state. Clip effects goes away. I'm on the timeline. I have the particular views that I want to see, objects, IO, inserts, or whatever. I could have multiples of those set up. But it was really just the idea of, hey, that's just a window. Hey, get me there. There we go. Figure out what clip you want to work on. Obviously, if I want to tweeze, I can tweeze in the interface, and we'll get to more on that. But if I'm quickly doing, applying something to a range of let's just say we want to copy clip effects, and we want to select this, and we want to select, hold down shift, select everybody, and then paste clip effects, right? We should be able to then apply that to a range, right? And that's kind of what we did, okay? So I thought that was also kind of an interesting application of being able to do that. From there, just to kind of a little bit more gymnastics, I'm going to go back to our shift minus preset that we were playing with. What was that? Well, that was locates, markers here. And I chose editing, and I chose snapshots, right? Editing and snapshots. So I thought, it'd be cool if we could just basically select a chunk of something on the timeline. This is probably more of a music type of workflow for loop-based stuff or little phrases, but regardless, it's useful. Hold down shift, select a range, and then I could do things like, duplicate and extend. So let me just zoom out so you can see a little bit better, because it's going to zoomed in there. So dupe and extend is great, right? It takes that duplication and it extends it, right? It's doubling and tripling and great for loop-based workflows. So that's kind of the idea there. But really just trying to show you about how to kind of tweak your environment to get around better. So back to 0. 0 clears what we have. The down arrow clears the selection, which is very, very handy. And then, I know what I wanted to do. I was going to actually leverage our mono objects and talk about groups and group attributes and suspensions and things. So let's do that. How are we doing? We're doing okay. Okay. So, and maybe we'll try to come back and see if we can make our layout and our window thing work a little bit better. So I'm going to go back to my folder structure, because I think that's a great way to kind of navigate from here and basically go to our folders that we're looking at, and we were working on objects, right? So there's our objects, and I can find our mono objects, which are here. Okay. I'm going to shift control. I'm going to justify those in the timeline. I'm going to select the track. You can see all of our mono objects. I'm going to basically make a quick group. Very simple. Actually, you know what? Let's do it on some different tracks. Let's just do some stereos. It doesn't really matter. We'll do stereo object here. Shift control, select. Now we're looking at stereo object 11, 12. Let's just take some tracks, hold selection. We'll make a group. Very simple. Okay. So from the top view here, we're going to basically go, I'm going to go back to Shift 0, and I'm going to press the groups button. Okay. And basically in here, you have a quick way to make new mix or new edit. I'm just going to give it a name. Stereo object 4, right? Whatever this might be, mix, and then, you know, set up your attributes. You know, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but usually your globals are generally your normal use case. And then your individual attributes are kind of the harebrained or the, you know, individual, the not normal use case. That's kind of how I would approach this. Okay. So in this case, the pans are linked. So we quickly made a mix group. I can bring these up. We can, here, let's try this because we had some fun with this previously. I'm just going to bring up a couple of these. If you bring up a window with holding down the shift key, it's going to detarget it. Right, so I'm basically tapping the first 4 of these with shift held down, and then that will bring that up. Detargeted, the little target button's gone, right? So we have relative, well, currently it's absolute, but if I hold 2 down, right, I'm gonna have an offset, right? And so now you have an offset for the panning for those things. While we're here, let's just make a quick window configuration because I want to see if I can get back to this. And we'll call this window configuration 80, and we'll call this ST object pan. Okay. Okay. So what are we doing here? Well, I just wanted to show creating a quick group, basically having linked panning if you want it, being able to suspend the links either on an individual group basis, right? So you basically have the individual group, which can be suspended, right? As you can see, or I can suspend all, and that'll suspend all groups, obviously. Okay. Take your suspend off. Let's just do a quick, if this was something that you really wanted to get to a lot, you could map this, and I'm going to go back to my locates. We're just going to go to, we're just going to add a quick function here under 3, and we're going to go to window configuration, and we're going to go to stereo object pan. Okay. So I know that was pretty quick, but I'll show you what I just did. Basically, we showed a little bit of group creation, suspensions, linking. I can press 0 as always, right, to get back to my default state. If it was something I was working on, I wanted to get back to quickly, I should be able to recall that with the 3 switch, right? Linked, suspended, now they're individuals, right? Group stuff is up on the top. The bottom could occupy automation or monitoring or whatever. They're independent, which is really handy. And then again, if it's something you're using for a particular stack of elements that you're designing, just that's why I really set up the enter switch as a, hey, just save this screen set. That's really what a window config is. I'm just using it a little bit more liberally, really, to be able to do this kind of thing, right? So 0 clear, 3, get back to that particular collection of tracks. There you go. And that's what that is. Okay. So close your group window if you want to, just basically hit close and you're out of groups. Okay. So we did a little bit of grouping. Excuse me. Just really wanted to show a little bit of kind of navigation. And when I'm done with this particular view, I basically just press menu kind of as always to get back into my structure of folders where maybe I want to look at, now I want to maybe look at beds, right? Or whatever is appropriate for what I'm doing. Okay. Okay. So hopefully the preference, just kind of to bring this back one more time, the preference with regard to the settings for plugins, pans, and send is really important. It dictates what is ever going to pop up on the screen, right? So if you never want sends to pop up on the screen, turn that off. If you want to control everything that you do explicitly, like we just did, you can turn it all off. And what happens then is basically you obviously have control, you know, on your joysticks and panners and interfaces on the desk. And the only time it's going to pop up a pan window is if you explicitly press, you know, that switch for pan window, right? And that's totally a valid workflow. And again, that is set up right here. It's very important. So we're going to go back. Let's just go back to plugins only, because I think that makes sense. Okay. Okay, awesome. So we did a little bit of window configs, did some zones, talked a little bit about layouts. Let's talk a little bit more about kind of moving around in justification. I think that's also a good idea. How are we doing here? We're doing pretty good. I didn't mention it, but you do always have global window controls right here. So just stretch this out slightly so you can see this a little bit better. You do always have global controls here. So if you option touch pan, you're going to get rid of all panners. If you option touch plugin or any of these, you always have individual window menus on the top level if you're at the shift 0 level. Okay, so that's a good thing to know. I've just kind of added an extra step where 0 is my clear, and that sets me back to a default state. But let's talk a little bit more about getting around, because I think this is important. So if I'm in a layout, right? So let's just repopulate this zone with the layout. So I'm going to choose the left zone, target that. That turns white. I'm going to choose layouts, and I'm going to choose some other thing in here, which is, whatever. Let's go to Dolby Atmos Music Panner A. Okay. So that's now Dolby Atmos Music Panner Stereo 1. Excuse me. It's blue. It says I'm in a layout. Over here, I'm still looking at, you know, controls for effects. Right? So get that out of the way, hit 0. I want to quickly get to, let's say, you know, this track. I can just do a shift control and select that track. And now I'm looking at that track justified on the timeline. Okay, that's important. If I keep this up, keep the effects section up, which is essentially in a zone, I can kill the left zone just by doing shift left zone. And then I can invoke a scroll to track, right? And type in the specific track name and get to that track immediately, right? So that's, if you know kind of what you're looking for within your session, you could certainly start typing. And if your nomenclature is such that you know DMP ST is Dolby Atmos Music Panner Stereo 5, you can get there, right? That's going to then justify that as the thing you just looked for, which is now in the timeline, right? And I think that's a really important way to kind of jump around. So back to scroll to track. I happen to have a percussion track. There it is. I want to see that there. I want to zoom into that. And that's what we're doing there. Okay. So that's within or without a zone. These tracks right now in this spill zone, this not spill zone, can be banked, right? They are not layouts, not spilled VCAs. They're nothing. They're just normal vanilla tracks, but I can still move around within this zone independent of what is over here, which is effects, which is accessed from a folder. Okay, if that makes sense. Always independent, right? The right zone is the only zone that's actually currently open. Now there's no zones open. Okay. Okay. Let's do one more thing, and let's look at. Let's just do another. Another experiment with a layout, and then repopulating some layouts within zones. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do what we just did previously, which is bank justify to a specific track. Okay. So I want to find a certain stereo object, perhaps. So I'm going to go scroll the track. I'm going to start typing ST, OBJ, ST. You have to know kind of my range. Okay. So object stereo 1718. Or whatever you've named that track, right? Get rid of the plugin window so you can see that. Here I am. I'm selected. I can attention that track. You're going to see that in the center section as well. So I want to build a layout that's based on this. The first kind of starting at this track, they're already on the desk. I can go to, I want to show you this in a better way, but well, it's fine. You can kind of see what we're doing here. Actually, no, here. Let's do this. I have too many views. I apologize. Again, we're looking at object stereo 1718. It is selected. It's populated the desk, not in a spill zone, not in a spill zone. It's just normal banking, right? I go to tracks view. We're looking at the tracks. I can double touch assign, and it is going to populate, if you can see, that bucket starting on the first track with those objects, which is a really kind of a handy workflow to just, hey, load those in there quickly. And now I get to choose what I want to see on those tracks. And maybe it's channel, maybe it's EQ, maybe it's pan, maybe it's send, totally up to you. Press all, press pan, take all off, hit store, load it in here, give it a good name. Object stereo starting at 17 plus, right? That's one possible way to do that. Hit store again. Okay. So now I could get there quickly, right? I can obviously get there from layouts. I can get there from here as well. So let's load some zones in. Let's choose our left zone, and let's go to object mono. There's your object monos. Let's go to right zone. Let's load in object stereo 17 plus. There you go, right? If I go and grab a panner, what's going to happen? Well, nothing. There's no window because I told it not to bring up a window in this particular example. If I attention that track, I'm going to have access to not only the joystick, but the center section, right? So I have total control over those clusters. I'm going to attention this, right? If I, just like I was doing previously with the Dolby Atmos Music Panner, if I want to flip kind of mindsets into a, hey, let's just start to work on these individually, I could turn this into a fat channel, and then I could actually change the target to be panning instead of objects, instead of insert parameters. Okay, if that makes sense. So just wanted to really kind of show you a little bit of managing windows. I mean, I know I'm trying to manage some windows within the Zoom as well. That's always a little bit tricky. But I think you get the idea of being able to wrangle a window, work with a window. So let's just go into this object mono here, and let's just take a look at an EQ real quick. And plugins are still set to be able to be displayed, right? We talked about that already. If I want that to be gotten rid of, I hit 0, right? If I touch the encoder, it's back, right, as we described. If I want that to be moved, I've set up window configs to be able to move that around visually, right? If I want to locally expand this, I just hit expand, right? And now I'm working on this fab filter expanded, right? Let's move it over here, hit 7. And that's kind of the idea, right? Get out of expand, get out of Windows, getting out of Windows via 0, clearing everything. Moving my justification to what I'm seeing in Pro Tools. Well, I have two things up. Pro Tools doesn't know which one to look at, right? It has Object Mono 71. It has Object Stereo 1718. I need to basically tell it, oh, focus on this. Now I'm focusing on this, right? I'm now focusing on visually on that chunk of things in Pro Tools. If you want to change a whole bunch of views at once, use the all switch, right? Everybody into sends, EQs, dynes. That's really good. When you're done with a zone, put it away or repopulate it. So I could keep this up here. I could kill the left zone, and I could actually search for some other thing that I want to work on, which we always keep going back to perk, but we'll just do it for the heck of it anyway, right? I found something that I want to work on. It's here. It's this track. I'm going to go attention that and start panning on that, right? So that's the idea. Okay. And I'll bring that down. How are we doing? We're doing really good. I don't know if there's been any questions or any thoughts or anything, but I'm happy to engage if there's anything, Tony, or not.
We don't have anything in chat, but this has been very good, man. Well done.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. Well, let's, before we wrap, let's just look at a couple more preferences that I think are, I'm going to revisit, kind of that concept of the, how you deal with the nudging with certain tracks, right? So, basically what we said was, we'll clear our zones. We will, we'll go to scroll the track, and we're going to go start looking at our mono Dolby Atmos Music Panner tracks, right? Which we talked about. And we want to look at everything in inserts view, which we talked about, right? So we're going to go back to all, we're going to hit inserts, and we are going to see inserts view, which you can see. So the idea, kind of once again, just to kind of refresh with this and the preferences that we're leveraging, is we're saying that this whole section, which is somewhat confusing, but what this is saying is from the DAW, from Pro Tools, if I click on something, but not just click on something, actually kind of move a selection, it can trigger an attention. And that was really what we were doing here by leveraging the edit selection move up down. So that, kind of in combination with the plus minus is saying, hey, if you see the selection change, re-attention that track. That's really kind of what I was trying to get at here. And so if I attention the first track and I actually push into the Dolby Atmos Music Panner, now I should literally be able to go and turn these zones back on and be able to go and then, really quickly get track to track. And that was really kind of the experiment here. Can I do this? And yeah, I can actually quickly be able to make positional changes in re-attention a track instantly and move and figure out where I want to put that and all of that. So that was really the kind of idea with creatively manipulating soft keys in your windows and your environment to perform a task, to solve a problem. And so that's really what this is doing, being able to move around quickly and get a track and bring it up and then done. Great. I'm good with that workflow. Put those away, right? 0, clear the timeline. And that was what that is. So on the center section, just bring that real quick here, big MTM. The center section, I would either hit back or I could actually pinch in to basically go back to my chains view. So it's showing the Dolby Atmos Music Panner, but it's showing basically the top level chains view. Okay.
Thanks, Jeff. We have one question from Daniel. Unrelated to this, but just at the very end here, just wondering how the assignable knob in Pro Tools is going.
Assignable knob. Yeah, I mean, I think Eddie must have talked about that on the doc or some of the Facebook or something. But yeah, I mean, I think he's fully expecting to present that and make that available presumably in April, but we'll see. But yeah, conceptually, if you're familiar with, that works currently like in Logic or Cubase. And conceptually, you can basically hover over a parameter, for example, a sender, a pan, or, channel strip, and then basically lock that to the knob. And so, yes, finally that particular part of the real estate on the desk will be lit up, which is great, right? So you can basically figure out what parameter is important to you for your workflow and lock it until you put it away. And that is the knob right here, essentially, is what he's referring to. If you follow the attention fader all the way up, that is what is the assignable knob and will be activated in an upcoming version of Pro Tools and Yukon. Cool. Well, thank you, and appreciate it. And we will be back next time. But thank you for coming, and we will see you next time.